In the summer of 1977, in a modest house on Green Street in Enfield, North London, something strange began happening. It was a quiet working-class neighborhood, the kind of place where life was usually uneventful. But when the sun went down that summer, a storm of unexplained phenomena descended on this ordinary home, capturing the attention of the entire nation. What began with small disturbances would go on to become one of the most famous hauntings in history. The Enfield Poltergeist. The home belonged to Peggy Hodgson, a single mother trying to raise her 4 children, Margaret, Janet, Johnny, and Billy. They were a relatively normal family, juggling the challenges of everyday life. But on the evening of August 30th, 1977, everything changed. Peggy heard her daughter Janet screaming from upstairs. Rushing to her room, Peggy asked what was wrong, only to hear Janet tell her the chest of drawers had begun moving across the room completely on its own. At first, Peggy didn't believe her, but then she saw it. The entire wooden chest was sliding across the floor, seemingly propelled by an invisible force. Disturbed, Peggy pushed it back against the wall, only to watch in horror as it began moving again. This time, she couldn't stop it. It was almost as if something was preventing her from holding the chest in place. Terrified, Peggy grabbed her children and fled to a neighbor's house for help. Later that night, the neighbors came over to see for themselves. But the happenings inside were even stranger than Peggy had described. Banging and knocking sounds erupted from the walls, loud enough to echo throughout the house. It was as if the entire building was alive. Objects shifted, chairs wobbled, and the air was thick with unease. This was no longer something Peggy could dismiss, so she called the local police. When the officers arrived, their reaction wasn't what anyone expected. These seasoned professionals who had faced crime and danger were coming out. One officer reported seeing a chair slide across the floor, moving several feet without anyone touching it. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't find any logical explanation for what they were witnessing. But here is the unsettling part. The police couldn't do much beyond taking notes and leaving. There was no crime being committed, at least not one they could prosecute. Word about the disturbances spread quickly, and soon paranormal investigators Maurice Gross and Guy Lyon Playfair from the Society for Psychical Research got involved. They weren't strangers to reports about ghosts and hauntings, but what they encountered at the Hodgson home was unlike anything in their prior experience. During their time at the house, Gross and Playfair documented countless supernatural incidents. Furniture moved unpredictably. Marbles flew through the air without any force behind them, and strange knocking sounds seemed to communicate patterns. At night, the children, especially Janet, reported feeling cold hands touch them, as though they were being grabbed by unseen entities. At times, Janet's body would contort in unnatural shapes, defying what seemed physically possible. The activity grew so relentless that the investigators set up cameras and recording devices. What they captured remains controversial to this day. Photographs revealed Janet levitating several feet off her bed while her siblings lay asleep nearby. Audio recordings featured inexplicable voices, sometimes speaking in guttural tones, claiming to be former residents of the house. Janet, who became the focal point of the activity, seemed to be in the grip of something far beyond her control. One of the recorded voices identified itself as Bill Wilkins, a man who claimed to have died in the house decades earlier. The voice spoke through Janet, describing how he had passed away in a chair in one corner of the living room. Strangely, Peggy Hodgson later learned this information was true. Bill Wilkins had indeed died in that house, years prior, under the circumstances the voice described. For months, the Hodgson family endured what seemed like a living nightmare. Investigators cycled through the home, journalists wrote up sensational headlines, and neighbors remained glued to the unfolding drama. Many openly wondered, was this a genuine haunting or something else entirely? Plenty of skeptics argued the events were a hoax. Some suggested the Hodgson children, especially Janet, might be playing elaborate pranks for attention. They pointed out inconsistencies in the photographs and noted that Janet herself admitted to faking some minor incidents, claiming the investigators pressured her to do so. But others argue this only proves Janet's desperation to be believed. After all, dozens of witnesses, including police officers and neutral observers, reported the same unexplainable phenomena. Even Grosser and Playfair weren't entirely unified in their conclusions. While both were convinced of the paranormal activity, they didn't agree on its origins. Was it truly a poltergeist? A restless spirit trapped in a home? Or could it have been psychokinetic energy, a manifestation of intense emotional distress from a family struggling to cope with their circumstances? For 2 years, the Hodgsons lived amid this storm. By late 1978, the activity began fading, almost as mysteriously as it started. Janet went on to live a relatively normal life, though she claimed she occasionally felt the presence of Bill Wilkins near her. The house itself returned to silence, becoming just another home on Green Street. Decades later, the Enfield Poltergeist remains one of the most well-documented hauntings ever. Yet despite all the photographs, audio recordings, and witness accounts, no definitive answers have emerged. Was the family plagued by an angry spirit? Or were these events simply the result of hysteria, mischief, and coincidence? One thing is certain, for the Hodgsons, those years on Green Street were anything but ordinary. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, the Enfield Poltergeist reminds us of the powerful human fascination with what lies beyond our understanding, and maybe, just maybe, a part of that mystery walks among us still.